Hey guys, welcome back to User Experience Points. So this week we're going to talk about Deus Ex: Human Revolution. I'm surprised I haven't gotten to this one yet because it's a really great example of gorgeous visual design and some great user experiences that really keep player use cases in mind. And what better place to start than right at the beginning? When you start the game, you're presented with a set of experiences rather than a set of difficulty levels. While on the back end these are simply modifications to your health and enemy difficulty, presenting them in this way makes them less intimidating to someone who maybe doesn't play video games that often and just wants to experience this cool looking cyberpunk thriller type deal. Presenting difficulty levels like this, or at least providing descriptions for them, is a great way to onboard players without them being too caught up on whether they should be playing on easy, hard, or normal mode. Copy is extremely important to user experience design, and it was handled excellently here. One user experience I never noticed when I was playing the game frequently is that you can actually access the game's tutorials from the main menu. In this section you'll find every one of the game's tutorials. These are extremely accessible because they're both subtitled and you see the button commands come on screen when actions are performed. The fact that these tutorials provide a way to read how an action is done, see which button you have to press, and see what it looks like when you perform the action correctly caters to a bunch of different learning styles. I only have one small nitpick with this menu in the way the on-screen controls are displayed. Once you've opened a tutorial, the only button command that you should be able to see is back. What's confusing is the select command is properly hidden, but the scroll command isn't. I don't know if this was a technical issue or what's going on, but you should never display a control on screen that doesn't do anything. Next, we're gonna talk about loading screens again. Aren't you excited? I'm excited. Here's why. While I will always praise any loading screen that doesn't disappear until you're done reading and press a button to continue on, the really interesting thing is that this game actually has two different types of loading screens depending on use case. See, the first loading screen that you see whenever you launch the game, which means it can assume that maybe you haven't played in a while because your console has been turned off since then, or you've at least exited the game, you get a loading screen that has a summary of the past story events leading up to where you are now. This is a great way to get caught up on the story and see how far you are in the game based on how many locked icons there still are. After you've seen this screen once and haven't exited the game, any other time you see a loading screen you get a series of hints instead. This makes perfect sense because any other time you see a loading screen in the game, you're probably loading a previous save because you goofed up when you were trying to be sneaky, or you're just waiting to move between areas in a town. In both of these scenarios, the loading isn't going to be as long, so it makes sense to read a quick hint. Plus, after they've caught themselves up, players don't want to see the same plot summaries over and over again. They want to see hints like a reminder that knocking guards out is less noisy than killing them. I might even consider this loading screen experience better than the one in Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes, which I talked about last week. It's very close. Either way, it's great to see developers acknowledging that loading screens should be a pleasant experience. Alright, so Deus Ex: Human Revolution is an RPG, so it's got a big honkin' menu that you tab through with the shoulder buttons on the controller. It's a perfectly competent execution of a common pattern for RPG menus, but it has some problems. First, let's talk about the on-screen controls. I think it was a smart choice to stick with the way the buttons look on the controller rather than try and integrate them into the visual design because it makes them very easy to see. But due to some of the more fluffy visual design going on here, these controls get moved around all the time. Sometimes this works out great and they're put right at point of views, and other times they're just kind of hanging out at the bottom because some completely useless visual design in the bottom row stole their spot. There's actually some places where the visual design enhances usability that we're going to talk about in a moment, but all these little moving arrows and whatever the hell's going on down there are completely useless. It's surprising to see such generic sci-fi interface filler here because the rest of the game has some excellent examples of diegetic design that look quite usable. Removing these distractions and putting the controls down there would give them a consistent home that the player would always look for when they're not sure how to do a certain action in the menu. The top row of this menu is used much more effectively to show which section you're currently in, along with your money and experience. Okay, let's talk about some of these specific sections of this menu. We'll start with the inventory. Instead of just a list of items, you actually get to see everything you have based on its physical size placed on a grid. You don't see inventory screens like this that often, but I think it's a great way for the player to see everything they have at a glance instead of having to scroll through a large list. This also means that it's very easy to show how items relate to each other, like if you select an item to combine, then it hides everything but items it can combine with. Organization can be a bit of a pain, but most games don't allow you to sort your inventory at all, so I consider this a great thing. Video games are all about putting a little bit of yourself into the experience, and that includes how you organize your inventory. So being able to organize it yourself is just one more way to do that. Next, let's look at the way skill trees are handled. In this menu, you choose which augmentations you're adding to Adam Jensen's cybernetic body. There's a cool bit of visual design here where it shows which part of his body you're upgrading depending on which section of augmentations you're in. It also does a great job enhancing usability because it draws your eye to the middle of the screen where you can see the name and description of the augmentation you have selected, along with your current praxis that you use to buy augmentations and the button command that allows you to inspect the augmentation further. See, visual design can make things look cool and enhance usability when done well. And that about covers it for this week. As always, thank you so much for watching this video. If you're new here, you should definitely subscribe because I upload a new one of these every Friday. I would also like to briefly point out that I've enabled fan funding on this channel. Now, to be clear, I'm not expecting anything from you guys and I won't be withholding content from you if you decide you don't want to donate. Think of it as more of a tip jar. If one of my videos just blows your mind and you want to give me $1, awesome. Otherwise, feel free to continue enjoying this channel completely for free. Either way, I'll see you next week.